Welcome everyone to the Ubuntu Community Q&A. I'm here with Alan Pope today.
Hello.
And Jorge Castro.
Hello.
Yeah, we lost George on the community team quite a while ago, and I have no idea what he has been up to. George, what's been happening? How long has it been? Like 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
It's been about, I've been on Juju for almost 3 years now, I think. And then I was moving back to Michigan when I moved teams. So yeah, it's been a while. Am I on the right IRC channel? What am I supposed to be?
Right.
On air?
We should mention that. For all of you who are watching this through ubuntuonair.com, there's this IRC or chat widget below the video feed. Just pick your favorite nickname, hit the connect button, and then you can talk to us. And you can ask all the questions you might have for George and for other questions as well. Just make sure you prefix them with question in capital letters. And yeah, if you use an IRC client, just point it to #ubuntu-on-air on Freenode.
I was missing the dashes. I was in a channel with one other person, and I thought, man, we really are not popular anymore.
Yeah, we should make it a redirect, maybe.
Yeah. So you guys miss me? Like, you haven't been doing a bunch of server stuff.
Yeah, we have no idea what we've been missing. Like.
Yeah. But I was just talking to Oliver Ogre this morning. I actually grabbed an old laptop and I actually built an Ubuntu server. I call it Ubuntu Server Next Generation. So I put Snappy core on it. I installed the Docker framework, and then I started to take things that I would serve in my house and kind of put them on there as Docker containers. So I was able to give the team some feedback there. But it's actually pretty.
Rewind
there. And everything. It's like pretty sweet.
Rewind there. What you took a normal laptop and you wanted to make like a sample home server. So you install Snappy Ubuntu Core.
Yeah.
Is there like an image that works on x86 machines? Because I know a lot of the time we talk about IoT and BeagleBones and stuff.
I know. So let me kind of tell you this story, because I totally went in as like, oh, server guy or whatever. So first of all, it's just an image, a .img. So at first I thought, oh, cool, I'll just DD the stick. So I put a USB stick on my normal laptop, and I DD'd the stick, went to boot off of it, and nothing happened. Okay? So I started to think, oh, this is built like by the phone guys, so they assume that everything is like a phone. You plug it in and then you flash it, right? So what I did is I took the image file, copied it into a normal USB installation live CD, booted off of that. Then I DD'd the disk on the laptop from the live CD, right, as like a target. And that's just a simple DD.
Is that the right way to do it?
Currently, that is the way to do it. I was asking around, and people were like, yeah, we're working on... so this is kind of server-related for the mass. For the OpenStack installers, we have an installer called Curtain for the Curt installer. Curt means short and small, if you don't know what that is. I know I'm American, so my vocabulary is not that awesome. So we're going to tie it into that, and you'll be able to just like, hey, here's the thing on my network, and blast it, and it'll do all the things, all the normal things. But in the meantime, like, I didn't know. I see a .img file. I assume that's some ARM thing or whatever. And it booted up AMD 64. It's just my old HP laptop. Normal kernel. Everything about it was like Ubuntu, and I was like, awesome. So it was back there in like my little server closet. So I came out here, SSH to it, and then I couldn't do anything to it, right? Because it's read-only, so I was like, aha, there's got to be a way to do this. And I was reading discussions about how to make things more comfy and whatnot. So I just wanted to edit a text file to do something, I forget what it was. And so I did VI whatever, and it's not normal Vim. It's like VI, like old Unix, like the stripped-down one. So my arrow keys didn't work, and like I like totally didn't know how to use it, so I quit out. I'm like, fine, I'll just use Nano. No Nano in Ubuntu Core because it's stripped down. So I was like, man, I'm having a real time figuring out how to administer my Ubuntu server or whatever. Then it like hit me as soon as I started asking around. You're not supposed to do any of those things. Like the idea is that you do all your config and whatnot on a separate machine, and then you basically kind of push out like an image that's like gold. Like you do all your editing and stuff. So I started doing all my editing in my comfortable, normal Ubuntu desktop environment. If I was in a work situation, obviously, you'd want to just toss that in Git or whatever and have a CI train that automatically builds and spits out an image for you, but I'm not doing that at home. So I got that up and running, and I was like, finally, the Snappy world came, and I purposely picked an older version of the image because I actually wanted to go through the update process, which is awesome. Like, it was like done, and it like rebooted, and like it was like faster to reboot and blah blah blah, doing all that stuff than the typical apt-get, per package. Then you gotta configure each package, which I thought was, the speed of that I thought was cool, but then I was like, well, I'm not really doing anything, so obviously it's going to be fast. So I was able to get some services. I found some Docker containers on the store. I'm kind of doing it the bad way. I'm kind of relying.
When you say Docker containers, does it ship with Docker like already pre-installed, or do you have to install Docker?
No. I did. Yeah, after my Snappy upgrade, I did Snappy install Docker. The version was a little low, so I left some feedback to the guy who wrote the package. Got that installed, went into the Docker registry, found some Docker containers that I wanted to run, snagged those. Again, kind of doing it not the way I would do it in real life, so I was just grabbing the container instead of rebuilding them to confirm the binaries and blah, blah, blah. So I was able to get all those services up and running, get them talking to each other. Where it kind of started to fall apart is in Docker world, you have a tool called Compose, which is similar to like what we do in Juju with bundles, right? Where you say, I want these containers, these talk to these, this gets this gets that, this gets that. And but the Docker Snap didn't include Compose, so I guess people are just going to eventually supply that separately. What I wanted to do is kind of just graphically put together through the little web UI that Docker has for like doing a Compose thing. So that quite wasn't there yet. And the big one, I think, the reason I'm not running all my stuff now is lack of storage with Snappy at all. So I kind of looked up how the CoreOS guys do it, and you could say, hey, here's a iSCSI or, in my case, an NFS share, Samba share. Connect that to this thing, write stuff on it. But Oliver, when I say Oliver, I mean Oliver Grauer told me he's currently working on that. I think once you get storage and you add, a Docker charm, I think, within the next 6 months, I don't see why you wouldn't want to experiment having just a home server with Snappy on it running. Like, I know people are going to use it for robots and things like that, and I think that's
right.
Awesome.
But if you wanted a limited set of things like share your stuff out over Samba and maybe a DNS server at home and a few other like key services, each one of those would be provided by a different snap, and you just install those snaps and away you go. You're done.
Yeah, because it's not like older traditional Linux where you can kind of just fat finger your way around a config file and sort of figure it out, right? Like there's no when they say there's no editing of files, they really mean that. Like, even things thinking in like a DevOpsy kind of server way, I was like surprised on how much things I still do to individual files. In a world where we're all supposed to be reproducible, like how many snowflake little config things I'm still doing around here and there. And this really kind of forces you to be like, nope. In fact, like I didn't even know where to write data, right? Because I was like, okay, obviously I'm not supposed to keep states in these two, the read-only partitions. So then I found where I was allowed to write, where the containers were allowed to write. Then I had to set up data containers for each of the Docker services. So it very quickly became very, very not a traditional Linux server at all.
This sounds like the making of a blog post, George.
Yeah, I did send all this stuff to Dustin, but I should blog about it. I'm just so busy with like my other day job blogging stuff. What I want to do is a guy on our team, Charles Butler, he has a cool little cluster of Raspberry Pis that he stacks up just to do stuff like this, to kind of prototype containers. Because ideally what I'd like to do is just have a snappy bottom, not care about it. Like ideally, it's amazing how much work we're putting into not caring about that level, right? It's like, I don't want to care. right? And then I just want to tell Juju to drop stuff on it. I don't care if it's Docker or Alexi, it doesn't, that's something that people will always pick, right? But I know I don't want to care about that garbage at the bottom. I say garbage as a term of endearment, knowing how much effort we put into like making all that stuff, right? And then but I think it's a good exercise. Like it's something I'm telling people, and it's the same kind of shift as well, right? If you wanted to try like CoreOS or Project Atomic, which is like Fedora's like kind of stab at this thing. It's like a different way of thinking. You're thinking totally weird. I remember getting frustrated, being like, why can't I write here? All I want to do is I want to add one line to a file, and this would be perfect. And I was just getting frustrated and things like that until I kind of figured out that it's kind of backwards, right? You kind of do all that prototyping and stuff, in a local thing, pushing your config files to source control, and then you spit out a phone image, basically, right? That just happens to run on a laptop. But once I got it up and running, it was brilliant, right? Every time there was an update to either Docker or whatever, it would just happen. I haven't gone through a major OS image update because I chose a stable one. But the Docker containers, each time they spawn, they do their little update bit. They kind of do all their little checks and things like that. It's actually it's not bad. It's once you get your head around that. I know I've wasted 15 minutes talking about stuff that's not even like what we're working on. But I encourage anyone.
I think it's brilliant. Keep going.
Yeah,
it's the more you talk, the fewer they have to see.
Because I just want to do what I really want to do is like a low power Raspberry Pi to be like my Plex media server, whatever other related services are connected to that. Spawn those out of Docker containers, you know what I mean, and kind of have a stateless, thing.
Right,
because
so like an appliance that just sits there and automatically updates itself, and you just don't worry about it.
Yeah, like people do these all the time. There's a whole distro, Code Ubuntu. Its whole job is to run XBMC, right? And then you look at it, it's like you got to take a normal distro, you got to do all this stuff. So it's just like, and what happens, right? There's an upgrade, you hit the power button because it's an appliance, and it's not really an appliance, and app breaks, and you have to SSH into your TV thing. Meanwhile, your wife is like, why can't we? Why is our TV not working? And you're like, this sucks. I would just pay for like a Raspberry Pi appliance that was snappy with just Kodi on top. Bam, said and done.
Absolutely.
That's my plan. In the meantime, I got this NVIDIA Shield, which is pretty sweet little device that I really like.
So, rewinding then, what exactly are you doing over there in Cloudland?
Yeah, all right. I guess we got to talk about work now. That sucks. So I'm gonna start with a few things first. The first is gonna be containers and LexD and stuff because it is ContainerCon this week. It's in Seattle, and Dustin's there. I believe Mark's there. Stefan Graber's there, and Serge Halen is probably there. I'm not sure. But this is the Linux Foundation's kind of, how they have the plumbers conference where it's like talk about guts and stuff like that. This is kind of like where containers and stuff are going. So yesterday, I believe they announced that we are doing this mainframe with IBM on a Ubuntu server. I hope no one asked me about that, because I have no idea what's going on with that. So.
I was just about to say, we got one question about it already.
Yeah, we were expecting you to know all about it, George.
Yeah, it's certainly not running Ubuntu Snappy. That I could probably guarantee right off the bat. If my feedback from the last 5 minutes has been any, or 10 minutes has been anything, I don't. Did you guys see though? It's all black looking, but it has like orange, like in between those like weird metal folds. It's all like it's like a funky version of a monolith from 2001. It's like I don't know what's going on there. So.
It looks cool and just slightly out of my price range, I think.
I think they start with 75 grand. I think is the cheapest one. I'm trying to remember my old mainframe days. Yeah.
So these things are PowerPC, aren't they?
I don't know what the architecture is. I mean, we run on OpenPower and stuff. You guys should get Randall here next time because he's like the Power IBM guy. We have a dedicated guy just for dealing with IBM technology because there's so much, right? You got Power, you got this now, and because it's Ubuntu, it means that like we make guarantees, right? If something runs on Ubuntu, theoretically, we don't really care about what architecture you're running in, whether that's ARM or or power. So we have to make, there's a lot of background engineering that needs to happen in order for you to grab a powered machine and have it act like a normal Ubuntu server.
Right. I remember Colin Watson wrote a blog post some while ago, actually it was over a year ago, about how he was doing some work porting, I think it was Haskell to PowerPC.
Right.
And it was really quite interesting to read, from a developer point of view, how much work he had to do and how much effort it was for him to port just one thing to PowerPC. So yeah, that's worth a read if you've
Yeah, the neat thing about these power things, sorry, I don't want to talk about power all day, even though I could, is new power stuff is little Indian, which Indianness, if you guys remember back to your computer science course, crap, someone look up the definition. Anyway, there's big Indian and little Indian, and just about everything kind of set it on little Indian.
The byte order of...
Right. Anyway, it's like a fundamental thing, right? You can't just, like, switch it. Even though, like, some of the older powers, I guess, had like a switch mode. Well, anyway, hey, that doesn't matter. New power, we call power LE, which is power little Indian. For a great swath amount of software, all it took was a recompile. So when we were doing this like a year or two ago, Adam Conner, Infinity, and a bunch of those guys just went through and just kicked off archive rebuilds, and a lot of it worked. Some things didn't. IBM, of course, has a lot of effort going into upstream projects for the tooling that's important, right? Compilers and stuff that nobody really wants to care about, but you have to have, right? So yeah, like there's a lot of people, they don't believe me. They're like, oh, I don't know about doing another platform. I kind of got burned by Spark in the past or whatever, and then I could just SSH in. And I was like, you're not allowed to do a uname, right? But install what you want on this thing, and then let me know how it works out. And MySQL works, PHP, like almost all the like open stuff that people used to build businesses with works on Power. So that's pretty exciting.
Cool. So you said stuff's going on at ContainerCon.
Yeah. So ContainerCon. Sorry, I'm just gonna talk. So you just keep me on track, Alan, because otherwise we'll be here all day. Yeah, so the latest versions of LXD are now in the PPA. I don't know if any of you guys listening out there are playing with that. LXD, of course, is our daemon that coordinates with the Lexi client, which is how you interact with it. So these are basically system containers. So system containers are different from Docker containers, and I'll just explain that real quick. So when I was talking about Snappy, how I was grabbing Docker containers to put on that, those are what we call application containers, right? Application containers, and this is what Docker is designed to do, is basically to take an application and then just wrap that in a container so you can throw that anywhere and run it, right? Very stripped down. You don't want a lot of dependencies in there. There's like no init, right? You're not supposed to SSH into them. You're not supposed to treat them like machines, even though some people do kind of misuse them for that. But the pattern, right? The pattern is kind of, here's my application. The idea being, I'm the Rails developer or whatever, and I want you to test my stuff, but I don't want you to go install and do all these weird things. If I give you a container and you just run the container, it's nice and clean. You don't have to install stuff on your computer. We don't have to worry about the penny. Oh, you got the wrong minor version, right? This happens to Mac people a lot, right? They're like, well, I thought I could develop on my Mac, but I deploy on Ubuntu in the cloud, and like the version of SQLite is slightly different, right? This is like a real pain in the ass for those guys. So that's why people like things like VMs, like Vagrant, right? It gives them like a consistent library across, and containers can do this like really fast for them. So that's good. What we're doing with LXD is different. LXD is basically like a VM, except in a container, except that it's a real operating system, right? So you have init, you do all the things you would do to a virtual machine, install landscape on it to manage it, all that kind of cool stuff. It's just really, really lightweight. Like you can get away with putting a ton more of those on a machine than virtualization.
So is LXD like the hypervisor that the LXD containers sit on top of?
Right. We call it the lighter visor. Haha. So the thing is, you treat it like you would a KVM, right? It's like a real VM. It does all those things. The one thing that's different, remember, is like some people think, oh my God, VMs are going away forever, or thankfully, or yay or nay. I don't really care. whether people love or hate that. Currently, however, with containers, like there's still things VMs do better, like isolation, right? There's like sometimes you got to make sure that whatever's in that thing isn't touching whatever's in another VM, so there's still a lot of work in the container space, both with Docker and LXD and stuff, to ensure that you get the same kind of reliable, like isolation that you do in containers that you can get with VMs. So I'm not saying VMs are going away. Certainly, we use a mix of all these technologies, like when you're deploying OpenStack, right? So we can get a lot of density where we use LXD for Nova Compute to get you a little web server application or whatever it is. So we can get really, really, really high density because that's what people really kind of want in the cloud. I want to get as many applications running on one physical machine as possible so I can oversell them. No, that was a joke. But there might be times where you just want a normal VM. And there are times, big data workloads in particular, where you don't want any virtualization or containers at all. I want the bare metal, no overhead. Just give me the bare metal. So that's like the three kind of things that we deliver, like in Ubuntu OpenStack. You have the flexibility of using KVM, which, of course, bulletproof technology. We've been shipping it for a long time. It basically is. It is what it is, right? It does what it's supposed to do. And then we have support for the containers. For system containers with LXD, and then of course you can get the bare metal stuff if you just want to use MAS or any of those things. And then of course people can plop down application containers, or Juju could do that for you. Whatever it is however it is you want to roll, we give you the things to put on that. So that's where. So ContainerCon is like a relatively new event, and we have guys there. There will be guys there from Docker discussing where to keep driving this technology forward, which I think it's ironic because remember Stefan used to like at UDSs when we had them physically, he would be like on and on about containers, and we'd be like, yeah, that looks like something awesome. And now finally, years later, everyone's like containers everywhere. It's like I was sick of hearing about containers before like everyone else really got it. And of course, Google's been telling people, they've been trying to tell people about containers for years and years and years because that's how the infrastructure at Google runs. So that's pretty awesome. So there's ContainerCon. The next set of releases, something I want to talk about, which you will get a blog post here, is I was at the Chicago Lug this weekend demoing some of the big data work that we are doing as far as delivering this stuff. So let me just get you guys a URL here. That's just jujucharms.com/bigdata, all one word. So we've been putting together basically bundles of, I don't know if I could just is it better if I just screencast this? I don't know. This is all graphical looking and won't confuse people. All right. If you think I'm rambling at any time, Popey, feel free to stop me. So we've been working on a bunch of little bundles here that give people kind of out-of-the-box big data solutions for doing things like Hadoop and Tez. Here's one with Hive. Here's one with MySQL, Pig. So we kind of give people the entire different pre-built definitions of Lego blocks for problems they want to solve doing data analytics. And then, of course, we fully support the Elasticsearch stack on top of those if you want graphical GUI things. So what I did this weekend is, let me get my, here we go. That's, all right. I hope you guys can see that as we did a real-time syslog analytics workload as kind of a demo where you have things doing a bunch of things and they send things to syslog, and then we shove all that and we do analytics on it with Spark, and then we have a cool little front-end notebook thing called Zeppelin. So you can basically run this and get a working full analytical stack. We've got examples here. You'll be running a TerraSort in about 10 minutes. I don't know if anybody's tried to set up a 9-machine big data stack, but it probably took you longer than 10 minutes. So these are the kind of things our team's been working on here. Another one I wanted to show was our Kubernetes stack. Speaking about containers, here it is. So these charms, you can, if you forget all these URLs and stuff, this actually lives in the upstream Kubernetes project GitHub. And this kind of gives you a full-blown Kubernetes installation in a few minutes as well. So this is interesting. How I was talking earlier about having, a Snappy with a bunch of containers on top. Kubernetes is kind of designed to do that exact thing. Currently, obviously, this is on normal Ubuntu server, right? Or in a public cloud and things like that. But the idea behind Kubernetes is kind of a managed set of things that you throw Docker containers at, and it sets up clusters so that, like, if your web server dies or something very bad happens or the hardware breaks, Kubernetes handles moving workloads around in different nodes, right? So this is how kind of Google works, right? Like, if you think about it, how does Google probably work? There's a whole bunch of stuff, and if a computer blows up or a hard drive fails, right, Google doesn't stop working, right? There's like real processes and stuff, things running in the background. And for the longest time, the way Google ran this was they would have a huge thing, and they called it Borg, right? And they would just throw their containers at, and they would handle the auto-scaling, it would handle all this stuff that people want, right? Like self-healing services and all the things like that. So what Google did is they set aside a team with lessons learned from that and said, hey, we should do this open source. So right now I am pretty sure I can say with some confidence that if you want to try Kubernetes, running it in Ubuntu with our charm is probably the fastest way to get it going. You just need a bunch of machines or VMs and doing that. Any questions about that?
Not for me.
Let me see.
Yeah, there were a few questions on IRC.
Yeah, let's take a minute for questions before I move on, because I've said a ton of stuff. Sorry for those of you that are listening. I talk a lot.
So let Daniel grab the questions and.
Sure.
Yeah, there were a bunch of them about the phone and other stuff, but there was one about what's happening in 15.10. Maybe you can talk a bit about what's coming up in the next releases, either of Juju or Ubuntu itself.
So 15.10, I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses, but our server cloud stuff is very, very LTS focused. So where we do put a ton of effort is in the charms themselves that do deploying the cloud itself, so the OpenStack stuff. That's not to say that there's nothing happening in 15.10. I know last cycle we got Bcache, which is a feature I've been wanting to do for a while. So you'll get the normal, usual package updates. As far as for 15.10, you'll get the latest version of OpenStack. Like we do, which is going to be, hold on.
So do you typically, for running OpenStack, you recommend LTSs? You don't?
No. So I can actually explain. I can explain to you how that works. So we have something that we call the Cloud Archive, which is something that, like, especially if you're a Canonical customer, you use. So the way we used to do it, I'll just explain how we used to do it, is if you needed new OpenStack, you had to run a new version of Ubuntu because they were locked. Right, like we helped start OpenStack along with some other folks, and one of the immediate things was like, man, the time-based release cycle is awesome. Fall, spring, it's perfect. Let's just release at the same time, right? So at first that was good, right? Like for the first year that was okay. People wanted to try OpenStack. You just got it with your new server version of Ubuntu. But as people started to deploy OpenStack and OpenStack on Ubuntu in anger, right, in production, people would be like, man, I want all the latest stuff OpenStack's happening, but there's no way I'm going to give up that 5 years of support with the packages and stability in LTS. So what we started to do is backport OpenStack releases to the LTS. So if you're on an LTS release, you will always get the latest version of OpenStack. If you're on the latest normal release, you'll just get the OpenStack that comes out in that 6-month cycle. And the way we do that is via our OpenStack charms, which I'm pasting here. Which is actually brings another interesting point is initially we just started releasing the charms as well on an open cadence, but James Page and his team have found that releasing twice is actually what a lot of people want. So actually, the OpenStack Ubuntu charms are releasing every 3 months, right? I kind of call it tick and talk. So you always get the latest OpenStack when that new version of OpenStack is released, and then 6 months later, you'll kind of get all the bug fixes, all the lessons learned that we've learned from that new version of OpenStack as customers use it, stuff like that. So literally, we give you fresh OpenStack almost every 3 months. And if you think about the engineering effort for that, it's a lot. So in this latest version, this is 3 months leading up to 15.10, the OpenStack charms have grown the ability to deploy from pure upstream source. So if you're like, hey, I don't like the way the Ubuntu guys do these packages or whatever, you can plug in a Git URL and just snag whatever's upstream and build it on the spot, do your requisite praying and whatnot. But we thought that was really cool, right? Because it allows people to get the latest upstream code so they can hack on it. Made a lot of improvements as far as high availability and Neutron. Those of you might be familiar that there are still some packages where we really mean Neutron, but we say Quantum, which is the old name for Neutron. That's kind of been slowly gotten rid of because you can't just rename it. It totally breaks a bunch of stuff. So we've been slowly getting that rename out of the way. So you can definitely deploy certain things from sources. Of course, still experimental. So we'll see what happens over the next 3 months. As far as that goes.
We've got a couple of more questions coming. Sure. Andrew Hazen's asked one, this one's for you. Is there a page for new developers who want to help with cloud server or a list of issues they can work on?
Yeah, so I was interested in this because somebody posted the Ubuntu server list, hey, is there like a mentorship program? And Serge was like, tell me what you're interested in and I can help you out. So no, we don't really have like a formal program like that yet. I think the best way to get started is ping me, tell me what you're interested in, and then we can find each of the individual projects within Ubuntu Cloud and Server, because that's like a really big thing, have like their own lists and things that they would like to get done. So I would definitely recommend that. As a Juju guy, I can tell you writing Juju charms is definitely something we could use help out. In fact, we're even willing to pay for your Amazon cloud credits if you're willing to open source all your code. So that's something certainly interested in. Yeah, I wish we had like a true onboarding program that kind of, what are you interested in? You click and it said, ping this person. Don't have that. The best thing I could do is if you could just mail me at jorge@ubuntu.com. I'll try to get you in a place where you feel you can be effective. Let's see. No, I got the question of list now. What are charms? What are charms? So Juju charms are, you can find at jujucharms.com, and then search in the top right box there, or you can just click browse. Charms are sets of code that execute in clouds to coordinate services across each other. Right? So think of it this way. When you're sitting at your computer and you want to install MySQL, you apt-get install MySQL, right? Problem solved, you have a database, you have your Apache, you can do all those things. But when let's say you want to set up a cluster of multiple machines that is like a master-master replicated with multiple slaves and like all this kind of crazy things, taking multiple machines, solving multiple problems connected to some app or whatever. What Juju does is basically like apt-get, but for multiple machines, keeping in mind that the relationships, the connection between those multiple machines and multiple services is what it does. So it's like apt-get but for your entire data center. So this allows us to do things like say, hey, you know what? I can install a database, I can install MediaWiki, and Juju kind of takes care of the hard work that says when I connect these two things together, what's supposed to happen? And we do that in an automated fashion so that when traffic scales, you can just say, give me more MediaWiki, and you don't have to go back and reset up the database and do all those stuff. So it's an automation tool. What it really is, the cute way I like to describe it is it basically runs this root on the instance, and whatever it is that needs to happen on that instance happens. So you can call Chef, call Puppet. You can manually mangle files if you like. You can pull things from GitHub and build on source on the spot, whatever it is that you need to do. So it's really flexible in that regard. And what we do is we take contributions of people who are writing these charms for these services, and then my team kind of curates a store where we QA, make sure it's doing the right thing, we do testing, make sure it works on all clouds equally and on bare metal. So that when you say Juju deploy MySQL, you have that sense of confidence, just like you do when you install it from the archive, that it's doing the right thing, that it's peer-reviewed, that you're not getting craziness. So I hope that answers that question. Let's see what next. What do you think of Canonical's extensive use of Google services for storing potentially confidential business information, e.g. in Google Drive, and they are now a direct competitor with Android versus Ubuntu? If a reliable LibreOffice Online Cloud alternative existed, would you prefer Canonical to move to such a service? I don't really have a strong opinion about these. I've always preferred services, like online services, to actually running stuff on my desktop. I know that's kind of weird. I know there are certain concerns with that. Do I think that Google is spying on all our stuff on Google Drive? I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't. What do you guys think? It doesn't bother me. You know what really bothers me is once we put stuff in Google Drive, I can't find it. That's way, way worse from a productivity standpoint for me. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, you know, we have a contractual arrangement. We are a customer of theirs. I suspect we're a paying customer of theirs.
Yes.
And I'm sure there is some contract between us and them that details what they do and don't have access to. So, and I'm confident that the right people who deal with those kind of things have read those agreements and are fine with, you know, us putting our data in that.
Yeah, and we are a Google customer as well. I mean,
I can see why people are reluctant, you know, especially over the last few years, Snowden and so on, and, you know, worrying about other agencies being able to snoop into what we're doing. But, you know, if it was in Google's cloud or if it was in a LibreOffice cloud, if those, like, governmental agencies wanted to look at it, they probably could either way. So, but whether Google can look at it or not, obviously they can, because they have data center employees who manage their servers and look after the data so it doesn't disappear.
Right.
But
it's not like
whether they do.
Yeah, it's like the same with us. It's not like I can SSH into, you know, our OpenStack production stuff and see what Alan's searching for. I mean,
right. Oh,
the regulation of data handling, I think, is very segmented.
Yeah, like I can't see who's hitting our GeoIP server or our, you know, time servers or any of those. That stuff's all buried like many layers away from any of us.
Right.
So yeah. No.
And I think in the end it was a decision also based on like how many people would we need to employ to keep that kind of infrastructure running and maintain it and all the rest of it, or do we want them to work on the phone or on the cloud stuff or other stuff? So.
Right. Every person who's paid to work on keeping my email in Postfix or, you know, Exim or something is one fewer developer working on Ubuntu. Yeah.
I used to. I feel kind of sad. I used to care about this stuff, but I don't anymore. I don't know about you guys. Like,
you've changed, George.
Yeah,
that's right.
I'm older. So,
okay. Do we have any more cloud server questions for George, or should we move on to the other questions?
Yeah, someone left me a comment. This isn't about beginner cloud. This is more about cloud. And yeah, that's. I don't want to say that's on purpose, but when people say cloud, that's such a loaded term. I hate it. Sometimes, depending on if you ask end users who have devices and stuff, cloud, they're like, oh, I know Dropbox, syncing. I go into Google Drive to do things, right? That stuff. When we say cloud in Ubuntu specifically, now that Ubuntu 1 is not doing that, we mean infrastructure as a service. So these kinds of tools that we're building, they're kind of high-end. Yeah, you have to be a system administrator to use them. But we're kind of designing for a Google-style world or a Netflix-style world where things are done in microservices, right? The lowest number of machines starts in the thousands. Like, we do a lot of high-end stuff, right? And it's kind of our mission to get that kind of workflow that makes the Googles, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Instagrams, their efficiency at operations, getting that to users for your small business or even I use some of the stuff at home, even though it's not like the primary market. That's like what we do, right? Like we take things that are hard, the experts use, and bring them to people, and that's what we're doing with cloud, so that my kid can build the next Netflix, and then I could just retire.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a question. Like, you
Sure.
know how much I know about cloud and stuff. Like, I don't know a lot about it. And like when I read like a project description, for example, about LXD and Kubernetes and Juju, and it's all about cloud and orchestration and stuff. It all sounds like very much the same. Like, if I was to run a business or want to automate my services somehow, how would I go about trying out Juju, or what is what we recommend, and how is it different?
Sure. So for most people, obviously the most popular thing they do is they just go on Amazon.com, they log in, they connect their credit card, and then in 4 minutes or whatever, they have a server, right, and they can start there. That's certainly one of the places where Ubuntu is the most popular. It's a lot, right? I mean, Netflix by itself is a tremendous amount of instances, right? What we do is we offer everything for free as part of Ubuntu, right? So if you want to try Juju, it comes with Ubuntu itself, but we have a PPA for that. The other bit I wasn't talking about was MAS, Metal as a Service. That allows you to take a pile of boxes that you have locally and kind of treat those like a cloud, right? It gives you an API for you to do stuff to machines, and Juju drives that. That's available in the distro and in a PPA. I think if people want to, let me back up. And then we have OpenStack, of course, which is like comes with Ubuntu. We have an OpenStack installer. You literally just sit there and hit enter. You throw machines at it. These kind of tools are kind of difficult for the average person to use, right? Because you need machines, right? So they're kind of designed for a guy. Like my old job, I would sit there. I had a data center and stuff. It's everyone's learning about this, right? And then what I would do is set aside a little lab environment that was in a controlled thing, not touching my production network, is nice and air gapped, and you could sit there and mess around, right? Currently, most of the tools that we're mentioning right now are in that space, right? You kind of already know what you're looking for. Like OpenStack, for example, most of the questions we get are people that work at telecoms, right? And they're talking, well, I'll try to get a lab with a few hundred hosts, right? That's like a minimum thing. For normal people, there's still a lot of Ubuntu technology that you could use at home. So I'm going to give you a few here right away. So if you're just a normal guy who wants to learn normal Linux system administrator stuff, absolutely try LXD. You'll have to know how to add a PPA to do that, but I think you can do it. If this is a road you want to go to, you got to learn how to install PPA anyway. This is nice, lightweight. It gives you a place to experiment where you could totally break things without breaking your computer, right? Like a lot of people, they want to try Ubuntu. They're going to learn the system administration stuff. They install it on their laptop, and then they go and install a real stack. They add a PPA, and then 2 hours later, because they might not know what they're doing, they have a broken computer. Right? With LXD, you could just, I messed it up, whatever. Lesson learned. Throw it away. Start all over, right? So it's really nice. So if you want to learn like how to be a Linux administrator and do all these kind of server-y like things, absolutely learn LXD. You probably already know virtualization. I mean, it's not that hard for people to get VirtualBox and experiment with things like that. With LXD, it's much faster though. I love containers. They're really hot action. As far as learning how to do all these services, something I tell people, they're like, I want to learn Linux so I can do, so I can be better at my job, or how does one get a job being a Linux guy, since everyone's hiring in this space, right? Like literally every slide, every conference you go to, well-experienced Linux administrators are like in high demand. It's a high-paying job. It is an awesome place to be. So what I tell people is, you should concentrate on learning Linux-isms, right? You should know how to SSH. You should know how to edit remote files. You should learn to do all these things that Snappy says is taking away from me. Just kidding. You should certainly learn on those things. However, the real expertise is the stuff that runs on top of that, right? The only people that learn core Linux, the OS, and Ubuntu to do it are the people that like work at Canonical to build the thing, right? They know every component that they need to do. Most people, they want to administer a Linux system so they're safe, fast, high performant. But the real expertise is the stuff you put on top, right? That's everything from Hadoop to OpenStack, databases, Cassandra, PostgreSQL, all the other stuff that you read about. Getting an expertise in those stacks themselves are, I feel, just as invaluable as learning about the core operating system. Because no matter what, you're going to end up learning the core operating system anyway. We're going to make you do it, right? When something breaks, you have to learn it, right? But learning those individual services, those stacks, and the way I'm hopefully making that easy for you to do is through a Juju charm, right? So we can make it so you can run Juju on your laptop or on Amazon or something. So if you break something, you throw it away and do it forever. And then just pick a stack. You want to learn a NoSQL database? Grab it, play with it. You don't have to spend months reading through the first chapters, learning how to build it from source and doing all those things. Yeah, eventually you'll learn all that stuff, and you should, right? If you're going to be a professional at it. But like, if you say I want to learn Cassandra, I am trying to get you a working Cassandra cluster without you having to mess with Ubuntu or Cassandra and setting it all up. I kind of just want to give it to you. Then you can start, because then you feel that confidence, right? Like the first time I learned to set up a LAMP stack, I could never get it to work because I didn't understand Unix permissions that well, right? And I remember just being frustrated, right? But when someone shows you a working stack already and says, all right, dude, here's a database, it talks to this thing, this is the application, then you put a proxy in the front, then you load balance this way, and it all kind of starts to make sense for you, right? It's like mathematics, right, where they show you have to solve a problem the hard way, and then you finally figure it out at the end. They're like, or you could just have done it this way. And you're like, why didn't you just teach me the first way? So we teach you the easy way first, so we can get you up and running. And then you can go as deep as you want to go, right? If you want to be an expert in that stack, or if you're like, you know what, NoSQL databases aren't for me, let me try Postgres or something instead, right? So that idea, giving people that flexibility to put things where they want, that's like my whole existence right there. It's just, George, give me a charm, give me the stack of big data science stuff. Yeah, that way you can start the book halfway, dude, instead of like, W, get this tarball, right? And then you're like, you're mired in the weeds and stuff. But yeah, eventually you should learn all that stuff. You don't have to right away, though. So that's kind of my deal. I know it took me like 10 minutes to explain that. But we feel really, really strongly about giving people, like, I mean, and it's just like it was back in the old day with the desktop. People were like, remember what a Linux install used to look like before Ubuntu? It came with 15 text editors. Man, so people would be like, man, just give me a good one. I'll figure it out, right? So that's kind of like what we're trying to do. So yeah, someone's asking about Deco in the IRC client, which, by the way, I don't know if you guys know the guy who wrote this thing, but that Deco email client, when I swiped and it actually did what I was expecting to do, to like archive, that was brilliant. Like, I've used a lot of open source, and the polish in that app, I was blown away how it was like just one guy by himself, right? It's one guy, right?
No, it's a couple of guys.
Okay,
but, yeah.
Even then, I was like,
yeah, it's not a huge team.
Yeah, I was like, I can't believe this is free software. No, I'm just kidding.
So we've got a bunch of questions. Daniel, what do you want to do? Do you want to plow through them now? Because we've only got 10 minutes left.
Sure. Let me get the first one. Okay, the first one was about IBM's Linux 1. We covered that.
Yeah.
When is the expected release of the conversion to Ubuntu Foam?
This year.
If not specific date, what month? Okay,
well,
there we go.
First one this year. That's your answer. That was easy.
Okay, here's a question from a very long nickname. What is the safest way to install debs on Ubuntu Phone? So there's no safe way to do it. I mean, if you know what you're doing and if you want to get into development, then you can do it, but we don't recommend it.
Yeah, well, I think if you assume making the device writable and then adding debs, yes, I would agree. That's not a safe way to do it because you'll break over the error updates at some point. But what you can do is you can create a chroot on the phone, on the file system on the phone, and then chroot into that, and then install debs inside there. So you could use the phone as an ARM machine in which you build, and install debs, but do it inside a chroot. So if you break it, you throw it away. But the phone doesn't work.
Unless you run out of memory.
Well, if you run out of memory and disk space, yeah, that's going to happen because it's not a very big device.
Yeah. Sort of partially related to that, a workaround I'm going to do once ContainerCon is over and we actually get a LexD snap for Snappy is that kind of gives people a crutch, right? It's like, oh, I just can't get it. Fine, here's LexD, and you SSH it to a normal Ubuntu, then do the unholy things I want to do, and then all I got to figure out is how to make that talk to the other containers. So that's what we have the fan for, right? I think. So I guess I'll have a copy of the fan running on the Snappy box. I don't know. I haven't. That's something that I'm going to be investigating at some point. It's because there's going to be a point where you're like, oh, this kind of weird, different way to do things. Having like a real Ubuntu server there is like kind of a backup, right? And worst comes to worst, I'll SSH to that and kind of do what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I can't wait for all those pieces to come together.
Yeah.
Question from BlueDragon77. We know that the deb image is going to continue living for quite a while, but do you have any ideas for a long-term solution for the application store on the deb image? I think the question is how to get new apps, new software into Ubuntu proper. One good way of doing that is to get it into Debian, but you can also get it into Ubuntu. We have a page on the wiki about that. I think it's Ubuntu development/new packages. So just have a look there. And we covered the topic in the last Q&A as well. A question from Just Caracas. I have a Raspberry Pi 2. Is there already something available to install something like Ubuntu Next and a media server like Kodi on it?
So there is a Snappy image for the Raspberry Pi, but I think there's some porting work needed for XBMC or Kodi. I know Sam Spillers did some work some time ago to port XBMC to Mir. But I don't think that was finished. And I know Oliver Graver has also been looking at that, and a couple of others have. But I just don't.
I just talked to him this morning about it. Yeah, it's kind of difficult. There's a lot of depths, but he's like determined. Man, if you get a Snappy with a Raspberry Pi and only Kodi, I mean, there are people who buy these like shady Android clone boxes and stuff just to do that. Like, I think if we did a Raspberry Pi with just Kodi, that would be like the hello world. That would like. I think really help jumpstart people to get it, right? Be like, now I understand. I'm building an appliance, not a maintainable server.
Yep.
Right?
Cool.
I really want that. I just want to reiterate. I really want like a Kodi snap. Like
yeah, everyone DDoS Olgra at Ubuntu.com.
he told me other Ollies also investigated it as well. OLLI Ollie. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes.
Keanu asked if there's an optimized port in the works of Ubuntu Touch for the Nexus 5. There's some folks working on it, but I don't think anyone from Canonical is working on it.
No, there's a community maintained port, but it's not an official device that we're looking at the moment.
Not a priority. But you can get in touch via email. Just mail the Ubuntu phone mailing list. Okay, another question from BlueDragon77. Will we be able to make phone calls and SMS from the terminal? A use case for this would be, i.e., your phone is docked to a screen and keyboard, and you're already working on your keyboard in a terminal, but now you need to make a phone call. I think this already works because that's what's basically being used in part of the test machinery. We just need to find out how. Maybe also ask on the Ubuntu phone mailing list.
Yeah, you probably find if you look in the source code for Dialer app, it's in Launchpad, LP:/Dialer app with one L, and there's a tests directory, test autopilot down there. I think you'll probably find some scripts that you could use to automatically dial numbers and that kind of stuff.
Cool.
I don't think it's something we necessarily will put in the platform because it's quite a niche use case. Most people, when they want to make a phone call, they press buttons rather than command line. But I'm sure there's some people out there who would.
I know texting works today, right? I know you could definitely and text if you're.
What, from the command line?
No, I'm desktop mode. I mean.
Right. No, this guy's talking about doing it from the terminal. I thought that's the way.
There's got to be some API you can do. I don't know.
Yeah,
whatever.
Maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
I think it would be brilliant.
Yeah.
Especially with an ASCII telephone interface.
Like a hangout. Hey, dude. Like it's like down and answer. So
Make that happen.
Amelia asks, why are your hangouts done with an 1 hour runtime rule? I'd like to guess that, I don't know, we'd rather do a lot of them but keep them to an hour because all the ideas and stuff you guys keep typing on IRC we have to actually go implement. So.
And also
As
because
much
my
as I
kids
would
want to go
love-
to the park. That's
Yeah.
the reason mine's only an hour is because I've got to go and take the kids to the park. So
Yeah.
that's not for you. For me.
I got a meeting with a tech board in 3 minutes. I'm going to do this NVIDIA driver thing, dude. We're going to get an exception. Yeah, I can feel it. I can feel it.
All right, are we done with questions?
At all of them?
No, not quite. I think we talked about Deco earlier.
So W2VY says, what's the status of Deco email client? Is it being moved into the core? Also, what's the best way to get involved in helping with testing? So I'll answer the second question first. Join #Deco, DEKKO, on Freenode IRC. Dan Chapman lurks in there. Don't be scared by the bot that keeps announcing stuff. I think the bot's called Pip or something like that. And it says Pip tickety boo and stuff. Very, very British bot in there announcing whenever they land code. Jump in that IRC channel, Deco. Dan's a lovely guy. I'm sure he'll find things for you to do. Yes, there is a plan for Deco to become the default email client on the phone. And there's a few outstanding pieces of work that need to happen, things that you would expect an email client to do before we make it a default app, like notifications, that kind of thing. But it's mostly there. There's a lot of work and love gone into that, and Dan and Boren who've worked hard on that and based it on the upstream Trajita. So there was a lot of people before Dan and Boren who worked on Trajita that we forked from, who also did a load of amazing work. But join Deco if you want to contribute.
I'm a big Deco is so great. I know I sound like a broken record, but
they're working on the UI for the Converge desktop as well, so that
God.
When you plug your phone into the docking station,
Are there screenshots for that?
Yeah, we've got some preview mock-ups and things, and Dan's done a little video showing what it looks like. But I think it'll look better when you see it for real.
Okay, yeah, I can't wait. See, I'm a server guy. All I need is a working terminal and a browser, man. I don't care what. I am ready to move to Unity 8 as long as it can put pixels on my screen. I am willing to do it.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah, I think we're mostly done with questions. There was just one piece of feedback. Somebody said that they wanted an easy cloud. I'm sure George is working on that. One thing we should also mention for Jose, make sure you circle friend and subscribe whatever Ubuntu On Air accounts you can find. And I think that's it. Any last words from you guys?
No, I want to thank you, George, for joining us. It's been great to learn about all things server and cloud, because we generally don't talk about that kind of stuff.
Sorry to everybody who wanted a phone expert and then you got stuck with me. Sorry about that. But hey, when you're using that Ubuntu phone and it's connecting to all that stuff on the other end, you're gonna be glad I'm here.
Brilliant. Okay, should we wrap up?
Yeah.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a good one. Bye.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.